Hello, my beautiful motorheads. Welcome to Feroce, where we inspire you to live fiercely. I'm your host, Annick. Have you ever been interested in racing in a hare scramble or even wondered what a hare scramble is? Well, today's guest is Steve Kamrad, and he's known for riding the big bikes in these races. Steve has been a great ambassador for the sport and has inspired a lot of people to get into racing. And today we cover what it's like to race, what it takes to win, and what do you sacrifice in life to make that happen. So what's it like to have your motorcycle catch on fire in the middle of the desert?
We're going to go off the deep end right away.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the thing that I don't think everybody realizes that that moment of I need help and you're all by yourself is that happens right away. And then you have to think, what am I going to do? And I just thought back to I'm just going to shovel sand on it and hopefully it goes out. And I shoveled sand on that bike until it was way gone. I burned my nose. I had my helmet on and my mustache got burned off as well. That's how late I stayed shoveling sand. And then when the bike goes up in flames, you realize that there's nothing else you could do. That is the end of that moment.
Not many people have experienced that. Do you have any idea why it happened?
So we were having issues with the bike building pressure in the gas tank. And then I reported it to the team. We didn't do anything about it. Then my gas consumption was way through the roof. I burned almost 5 gallons of gas in 53 miles.
Wow.
So something was going on where I was losing gas. And we did a gas tank swap to switch from the Aurora carbon tank with that snorkel setup to just a stock tank. And then 30 miles into that, the bike was on fire and I was shoveling sand on it. So,
I don't mean to laugh because it's so crazy. I mean, you hear about these things happening, but then to actually see it or experience it yourself is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, there was the moment of why me too? Or of course it's me. But usually when I have an issue like that, there's a way to get out of it, a way to kind of come back from it. And this one was just, I was going to start walking out of the desert and Jimmy Lewis, the organizer of the event, happened to be on his bike, kind of keeping track of everyone as the rally happens. And he ended up giving me a ride back, which that kind of sucks when a Dakar champion has to give you a ride out of the desert because your bike burnt to the ground.
But you do get to say you got to ride 2 up with him. So.
That's actually the second time I've ridden 2 up with Jimmy Lewis.
Oh boy!
But it was really tough mentally to go through that. And then you're with a bunch of people, you have a big team effort, a ton of money, a ton of resources, and you feel super fortunate about the whole thing. And then it goes up in flames. The reason for the bike catching on fire, back to that original question, is just I think it was just maybe a mechanical issue that we never really addressed fully with the bike. And it's just one of those unfortunate racing incidences where things go sideways.
So speaking of that, how did you get into racing?
I've always been competitive. I played ice hockey forever, and I was coming up on not a midlife crisis, but I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. And then my friend and I, we went and raced a D6 hare scramble race. And I was 7 years ago. And we had already been racing. This is actually a friend of mine. We paralleled for a while. So we had already been racing adventure bikes and going places. But that's pretty different with the adventure bike stuff than it is from the dirt bike stuff. So when I think about when did I start racing, it's actually the dirt bike stuff is where I really started. And it was just showing up. We just went to an event. And we were let's see what this is all about. And by the end of it, we were oh, this is what we want to do forever. We didn't know this was available like this. Because you get to race on a track. We did hare scrambles. So you race on a track, everybody's going in the same direction. And that makes it really kind of fun to be, you can be as bad as you want to be. You can't act like that when you're on a trail ride. So then all of a sudden, we're hey, everybody's going the same direction. There's rules to it a little bit, but also there's no rules. So Once I did that, I knew it was on for me. I was like, this is kind of where I want to be.
Can you just explain a little bit like what the difference is between, because you mentioned the adventure bike, the hare scramble, and the dirt bikes, and just kind of let people know like what the differences actually are?
Yeah. So with the adventure bike stuff, it was always rally racing. So they do like a WRC car style rally. You start at a point and then you race to another point and then you do like a little navigation. So it's not like a real Baja or Dakar rally style event. The adventure bike racing that I was doing was, closed course. You don't really navigate, but you're wide open. And those just require you to show up on an adventure bike and then like really hang it out there. With the dirt bike stuff that I race now is mostly hare scrambles. That's a lot of, you show up, you get on your line, and everyone has so many different skill levels. So you start from C class, and then it goes to age brackets and engine sizes. So there's a lot of division in there, and you can get all the way up to double A. I'll never be a double A rider.
Is that considered like pro?
Double A is considered pro, where someone's practicing 4 or 5 days a week, putting in some real time.
Okay.
There's some real effort behind that person, and also a skill level that's achieved by only racing from like age 14 up. You're not going to walk on the scene at probably 35 and go double A pro. It's just not going to happen. But you can do it at 20, 25. You can start picking up some real good points. And if you're fast and experienced on a bike, you can do that. But the hare scramble racing, you start on the line. You've got like a 7 or 8 mile course and an hour and a half or 2 hours to do it. GNCCs run for 3 hours, kind of the same format. They're not super technical, so you don't have to worry about like, am I going to get stuck out there? Am I going to get trapped? And this is all East Coast stuff as well. There's West Coast racing that's a little bit different, but the stuff isn't insurmountable. You can just kind of, you can figure your way out through it once you decide if you want to go do a hare scrambler or an enduro. And the small bikes are actually some of the hardest things I've ever done on a motorcycle is the small bike stuff, even though they're 220, 230 pounds. I've never had a workout like that or, have to physically prepare for something like that.
When you say that though, because I think one of the things that I've always surprised about in watching, you race through Instagram and social media is that you're on these really big bikes. And coming personally from road racing, like we want everything to be lighter, faster. So what's the draw to the big bikes? And then you saying that like the lighter dirt bikes are harder.
So the big bikes, you can be a big fish in a small pond. There's not a lot of people that race adventure bikes or ride them that hard because they're expensive and they break and they're heavy, but they allow for some big speed. So when I do get to race them, and I'm actually headed out west to race the Biltwell 100 in a couple weeks, and I've done some other racing out west on the adventure bikes as well. They hold a lot of speed. You can actually show up on them, but then also the gap between a professional rider on an adventure bike and then just someone like me who's like semi-pro is actually very close because the bike ends up being the limiting factor, and it actually makes like the skill gap less when you get to the top end because the machine is what is like kind of holding everybody back a little bit in that way. You're just trying to wrestle this thing through whatever terrain you're in, and that can make for some really fun racing in the way that like I've beaten some pros because they've had mechanical issues or I've had a guy who just recently, he's 58 years old, came out with a vengeance at the Sandblast rally, and he was training on his adventure bike for flat track stuff, and he really put a hurting on everybody. So like, there's not that super duper like age or performance advantage that happens when you get into dirt bikes. It's just, I'm never going to keep up with a 14-year-old A rider. They're just so fast and talented.
Does it matter with the big bikes that you're like on a 2025 versus you're like, say, trying to race a 2018 versus I know for sure on dirt bikes, you want to be on the newest and greatest.
Yeah. So dirt bike wise, I've always been on like latest and greatest. I've spent considerable amounts of resources and income on dirt bikes. When it comes to the adventure bikes, it's actually having your bike dialed in more and having your suspension tuned right is more important than being on anything latest and greatest, which is very contrary to the adventure community where, everyone wants hill assist and radar and all these like slide controls. You don't need any of that. There is no frame update that's like really going to blow you away unless you get into maybe some of the new Cove adventure bikes, the Coves. Some of those look really good and should be pretty light. The Yamaha T7 kind of changed the game for a little bit, but I've actually had some races where a T7, I could just pull them in the straightaways because I was on my Triumph Scrambler 1200 XE. And that race just came down to the fact that like the T7 in deep sand couldn't really break 90 with the rider on it. another big guy like myself. And then, I could do 105 miles an hour. And I think over an hour and a half of racing, it came down to like 30 seconds. And that's just top end speed. But latest and greatest wise, there's nothing that's going to be really a performance advantage. There's no, I like to call it 0-day advantage. So when you show up with something that's like no one's thought of or no one's done, I've shown up with like weird tires from China and stuff and Indonesia trying to get some kind of advantage. And the adventure bikes really bring all that back together. Whereas like if you're on a 2012 KTM versus a new 2025, it is an immense difference that you can feel through the bike. And the adventure bike again kind of evens that all out. Like somebody on a 2016 Africa Twin could throw down some really good times in the desert with that bike. That bike's very capable. So it just kind of more hinges on whether your suspension's set up for you and things like that.
So you're racing now both those classes, so the adventure and also the dirt.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. How do you that's a lot. I mean, those are two different, things going on. Like, how do you make that happen?
You can't ride the same bike in the same week. So you don't want to, even in the same weekend, like I've done it before and made some really big mistakes on my dirt bike after getting off the adventure bike. So you have to pick and choose what you're going to do that weekend. The adventure bike stuff is much more limited. Like over here on the East Coast, I can race 40 weekends a year. And if you're in South Carolina, North Carolina, you can race every weekend of the year, just race. So with the adventure bikes, there's not a lot of time to practice. There's not a lot of races to go to either. So it's easier to balance those by just picking and choosing and then actually picking not a division, but a series to chase. So I chase District 6 and Tour, which are 2 race series over here on the East Coast. There's another 2 on top of that right in our area. And then with the adventure bike stuff, there's not really a series. There is no championship points to chase. So you can pick and choose too when you want to leave one behind. I've stepped away from some races and then gone towards others.
You had just come out of doing the Sandblast Rally, right? And that's a pretty big event, or it seems like. It's
a really fun event and it gets a lot of attention. It's not in like the small, like I said, like, adventure bikes are small pond, big fish. So it stands out in the adventure bike community. Max BMW, who's a BMW dealer in kind of your area, they show up like every other year with like 4 or 5 guys and a bunch of cool bikes. So it gets attention in the adventure bike community. I just came from there, yes, and pulled out a 2nd place finish.
Woohoo!
Yeah, thank you. In the modified heavy class, and then this race now runs night stages the day before. Before we used to have a shakedown day. Now we do what they call night stages, and we just run 2 stages at night, and then that's an overall finish. So I actually got 2nd overall in the night stages against all the bikes, and then 2nd modified heavy on race day when a few more competitors show up, because sometimes it's resources and sometimes it's timing. Like I have to take off from work, like starting with Wednesday to make this race that happens on Friday, Saturday.
Wow. Yes. That's a pretty big commitment. It also seems like your family's involved with all this.
Yeah, my dad got me started in riding and, kind of lit that spark there. And then my brother Kurt, he used his motorcycle for transportation when he was like a young kid. He had a DR200 that's like basically it's a lawnmower with a 5-speed. And he would be like, he would get an attitude because he's the youngest one. He'd be like, screw you, and grab his skateboard and go off somewhere like down the highway on a bike that tops out at like 50. So now we've kind of come together. I'm 7 years older than my youngest brother. And so racing, we are exactly the same speed in some races. And then others, we'll beat each other in different ways. But it's really cool to get to ride with family. And then my dad is technically my biggest and largest and sponsor that I have. He's been tremendous in helping me out, getting to races, getting bikes built, suspension done. It takes a village to get some of this stuff done. And having him around has been, I couldn't do everything that I've been able to accomplish in the past couple of years without his help and support. And so now it's like kind of a family affair. And then I make my mom go to the one race that falls on Mother's Day. I guilt her into coming out to a hare scramble race.
Because that's exactly what every mom wants to spend their time doing.
She gets so nervous because, I've been injured a few times. So like she just she just gets so worked up at these things, but I make her come and I try to be as safe as possible during that particular race.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I also saw that, she came to your award ceremony, which I thought was so adorable.
Yes. Yes.
Her parents showed up.
No,
Freaking
I'm over here, 40 years old, and I make my parents come to my award ceremony and watch me get my trophy. And it's fun because like it's still the same stuff from when I used to play hockey and basketball. Those were like some of the best times. So yeah, dragging my mom around to these things is also really fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And you said that your dad, like, got you into riding. So, like, did he ride as well, or did both your parents ride?
My dad rode, and then when I was like 5 years old, he shut down the party. He kind of knew it was like coming. And then my other brother, so I have two other brothers, and so the middle brother was coming, and he kind
A
of,
lot of KAMRAD'S.
yeah, a lot of big boys. And so he kind of shut it down for a little bit. And then when I left for the Marines in 2004, I came back home from boot camp, and he had a motorcycle. So he taught me I understood how to ride a motorcycle by reading motorcycle magazines and understanding the mechanics of it before I ever rode a motorcycle. I didn't ride a motorcycle till I was 20. So very late bloomer on that end.
Yeah. Yeah. I started around the same time too. So with that, I mean, and this brings up a good point because, you started at that age and now in your early 40s, you're racing. And, a lot of people think that like, that's not attainable, right? Like you got to grow up riding in order to be able to race. So like, maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
The biggest thing is that I tell everybody is like, just show up. Then there's some other things that come to mind that I don't really share with everybody, but if I'm talking one-on-one with someone, but it'll be like, someone will say like, well, I don't have 10 grand to go buy a new bike. And I'm like, that's what Freedom Road Financial is for. You can go get a loan and you can have a dirt bike for $300 a month. And that's a lot. That's a really fun thing to have. And then the showing up part, the doing a little bit of research and then like trying your best and figuring out where you fit in. You might only like dual sport rides where everyone's out riding together and having a good time. And then, you might only like the competition of, say, an enduro where it's a couple sections throughout the day. You get times to cool down and relax and refuel the bikes. But there's a lot of opportunity out there. And then what's amazing is that these like dirt bike competitions, they have a C class, and like C class is like, you have to be bad at dirt biking to race C class. If you're good, you will blow everyone away. And so like there is everyone out there with the same skill level as you, the same mindset. They're going to try their best. And they think that this thing is like super important. To them it is. And then to everybody else around them, it is, but it actually isn't that important. So it's not that serious. You can show up on almost any bike that, just starts and runs and have probably one of the best days of your life. Not to mention the adrenaline rush of a start at a hare scramble is, if you haven't seen it or been part of a motorcycle race, it's unbelievable that you get to be in a situation where, 500 people, 750 people have gathered to all race dirt bikes together. So that kind of energy that goes into that is like really magnetic. It really attracts a lot of people in. And you would be like, you can't mess anything up. You can show up and like forget your gloves and there's gloves to buy there. So like there's all these things that people kind of put in the way of like, oh, well, I don't have this or I haven't been doing that. If you kind of just want to show up and do a race, there is like an unbelievable amount. You have to have an AMA card for those. And the AMA puts all the local race series in the back of the magazine every month. So even if you're not using the internet, you can still find everything in the back of a magazine still.
That's awesome. Like, how do you think the racing's changed your life?
It's addictive. Normal things that would be exciting aren't anymore. Like it's a little dark almost to think about, but it also fills a big gap in my life. Like I played competitive ice hockey up until I think like 36. So a couple years ago. And I played all through high school. And when I was younger, I played for some travel teams. And as you know, like ice hockey can be extremely competitive and the tournaments are fun and winning a championship feels amazing. And, so I've always kind of operated in those areas. So then having something that can take that place is really good. And then but now it's all I want to do. I only want to race dirt bikes. I've sacrificed so much for dirt bike racing that's probably how it's changed my life the most, is that I've put the most amount of resources, time, effort into it that I possibly could. Like there's so many people out there that do the same thing I do, which is like, they just that's what they do. I see them at every race, see them every weekend, and they're all having fun and being competitive, maybe to like some people's own detriment. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that like racing has affected in my life is that I have like a clear goal of what to go after, but it also like when it comes to work, if I have a race in Canada, I'm going to my race in Canada. I'm not going to work.
Now that's dedication. But it also is, I think you're speaking to is that it's there's also having something beyond yourself, that goal and that focus is it's elusive. And like a lot of people don't know what that's going to be in their life. So it's cool that you've made this decision, you've committed to it.
Yeah, and there's the other thing like parents that show up for their kids. I see
Yeah.
that effort that goes into that, and some parents like no one's really putting pressure on their kid that way, but it's what is feeding that like that passion. I just don't have any kids, so I don't have anybody I can put that pressure on. So I put all that pressure back on myself to kind of perform, and it's it's impactful in the way like you said, like where it's really focusing, and without it, I don't know what I would be doing for excitement. And so it probably keeps me out of more trouble than I get into. But at the same time, yes, I will do some things that are not financially or career driven wise in my best interest to
Hmm.
continue to go motorcycle racing because it's something that like people get obsessed about.
I appreciate you being honest about that because like a lot of people won't talk about that. And there can be conflict within personal relationships or people's lives when they make these decisions and not everybody around them supports it.
Mm.
But also like nobody, like we want to say that all of this is like easy and fun and light, but there is the realistic portion to it of you have to make a sacrifice to make this happen to a certain degree, whatever level that is.
And I've done that in my life in similar ways. So snowboarding was one of them. I took off a ton of time at work to go snowboarding. And then the adventure bike stuff, which is kind of how like you and I met, is through the motorcycle journalism aspect of things. And my dad was really against that because, it's a tough thing to be into. You have to take a lot of time off. Like I was taking time off of
Yeah.
work to go to Morocco. And it's like, my dad's like, shouldn't you go to work? He's a little bit old school, blue collar like that. And so I had to have a real duality in my lifestyles of like, I go to work as an electrician, and for my boss or my work partner, their most important thing of the day might be, oh, we got to get this wire pull done. And then for me, all I'm thinking about is like, I leave Thursday to go to Morocco or, I'm going to Ohio or Detroit to test bikes, or I have a race in Canada. And, it took a while for my dad to really get that because him and I are
Hmm.
really close, and it can really put a strain on a lot of aspects of your life. But that's motorcycling. Like it's such a lifestyle thing that it's all
Yeah.
consuming. Like if anyone says like, oh, I ride like, for fun on the weekends, like once a year, like they don't get it. That person doesn't really get it. But when someone's like, I read motorcycle magazines, I consume all the stuff online, and those are the people that like are really consumed by motorcycling. And it ends up being more than just the people who, oh, I have a bike in the garage and I'd never really ride it. Like that's not really what we would consider a motorcyclist. But then when you take that
Yeah.
up more notches and more notches, it can become really consuming in your life, which is a great thing
It's a lifestyle.
for sure. Yeah.
Are you still writing for magazines and stuff?
No, I haven't
Or
been.
ADV Pulse,
Yeah,
really?
well,
I
I
think that
was
was
I was
mostly
doing
your
some
yeah.
stuff for ADV Pulse, and that was great. But right now, I actually do more riding and racing on my own.
Great.
People think like, you get to go to a press launch, ride the newest bike, and then write a story about it or make a video. That must be so fun. And it is. It's a ton of fun. It was a great time in my life. But I've like I want to let that go because it is a little bit, you put yourself out there in a way where like you're really allowing people to come into your life and take time and ask you questions. And like that's all great. But where I kind of see myself now, I want to focus on racing and actually just having a good time. The being like out there publicly can be kind of tough. And so reeling that in a little bit, I just haven't been doing any work as a journalist lately.
Well, it looks like you maybe are putting that creativity into a little bit of your Instagram because you are exposing some of the stuff that you're doing. And like maybe one of my favorite quotes from, that I read often on your page is shout out to everyone that stayed home this week.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one that cuts deep.
Yeah.
It really hurts because when you do stay home, you're like, oh man, I did stay home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just scrolling on my phone,
yep,
not really doing much.
yes, yeah, and that's something I have to work on actively. Because I've got some injuries and some body aches and pains. And I would love to just stay home and like drink beer all day Saturday and then wake up Sunday and drink beer all day again and like stay home and watch football that or like lay on the couch. And it takes a lot of effort to show up actually. It's easy to do, but it takes a lot of effort. For instance, like with the Sandblast rally, my bike prep time was probably in the 40-hour mark just
Mm.
to ride that bike for 2 days. And literally the last time I rode that bike was at the last Sandblast rally the year before. I never even started it for a whole
Oh,
year.
really?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, about a week and a half before the race, I started working on it and putting some things together and spray painting some stuff and having some fun with the bike. And yeah, that's like something that not a lot of people see, but it does take the effort. So then when you hit somebody with that, like shout out to everybody that stayed home, um, it really resonates because it does put that person in that saddle to be like, damn, I did do nothing today. And I could have went out and rode my dirt bike. I could have went out and hung out with my friends. I could have raced. I could have put
Yeah.
in some training. So I find that to be like a really good motivator for myself. And then people just relate to it. And, also how you said, like I put myself out on my Instagram. That is a problem and a blessing. I probably get like 20 DMs a day. I will wake up and I will wake up and I will have like 14 DMs every day from friends that ride, that do motorcycles. I want to ask questions about suspension setup or like opinions on bikes. It'll be strangers, it'll be friends. But that is just the way I like to communicate, which is like the least serious way to communicate is through Instagram. You can just have kind of a lot of fun there and be silly. And yet, like, it's not as, it's still not as like inviting as if you're doing motorcycle journalism. If you're making a video, people really can take up some of your time there. And that's just like kind of where I pulled back from the journalism thing is I just, it, it's something that you can only do so many times too before you get a little
Mhm.
jaded about it. Like, and so it was just kind of time for me to move on from there. And then now I just have all these fun, goofy times with people and spend some time talking with people I don't know or people that really have some genuine questions.
In doing that, sometimes it's, as somebody who has to do a lot of social media or
Yes.
try to keep up with it,
Yeah.
is that we live our lives just the way we live them, right? Like this is just like who we are and like what we do. And sometimes it's I forget to share that might be inspiring to somebody else. And so like when I look at your social media, I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's great that he's putting that out there because you obviously are inspiring people to do things and oftentimes people don't know what they're capable of until they see somebody else do it and then they're like, "Oh, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could get off the couch this weekend and go do something."
Inspiring some people. Like I've had people come up to me at events and say like, the only reason I'm here is because I watched your video. That was a really cool aspect of say motorcycle journalism or when I was running my YouTube channel pretty strong. I think like one year I did like 60 videos and covered a lot, but it's so much time and effort to make a
Yeah.
video and actually have it cut together nicely. But those moments when you can have someone come up to you and talk to you about things that you've done and but it's also inspired them to do it is really it really makes you feel good. It makes you hungry for it more. Like I've kind of been a little bit hungry to get back into the YouTube game, but it just requires so much effort that like I look back on some of the stuff I've done and be like, I can't believe I did that race, but also filmed it because now I'll be in a race. And part of that is also like being a little bit more towards the front, say like at the Sandblast rally or being more competitive in my races. It's actually harder to document things and have fun that way. And my brain was really working a lot of overtime and maybe not even as focused as it should have been on racing as I was like making content or being funny or like being like, what's the next scene for this? One of my formulas for creating YouTube content was always just like a pretty simple 3-act thing, which was like you had your setting, your problem, and then your solution. And then that might be like an update on the day. But to even make YouTube content based around an event, that's like kind of the formula. Like no one wants to just watch your handlebars go down the road the whole time without any context. And I've even had some people kind of say like, oh, your YouTube videos inspired me to make YouTube videos. And I think that's that's also great. It's a lot of fun to see people like kind of try something, and then also they'll send it to me personally. So now I've got to watch someone's 7-minute video on what they did when I was there that day. But it's kind of fun to have that feedback. And it goes both ways. Like I'll give someone feedback and say like, hey, this was really great. You should have just talked about this at the end or something.
You talk about those days of racing, and you have mentioned that sometimes you have a crew chief
Hmm.
that helps. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because I think like a lot of people who get into racing, they're either there by themselves or with a couple of friends, but they don't think to ask maybe for more help.
Yeah, I think the biggest success or the biggest part of my success with racing has been the support on the way to the race, the night before, which might be like, Steve, don't drink another beer. Uh, or like, make sure you get a good night's sleep. But the other thing is like, on the way to a race, I have a ton of little rituals that revolve around me getting ready, getting to the race, and being in the right headspace. And then, so I have this person, my crew chief. She is the most winning crew chief I've ever come across. Like no one has more wins stacked up at different races, different supports. And, it's actually more the little mental things like, oh shit, where are my goggles? And, she's like, hey, they're right here. And they're clean and they've got 2 tear offs on them. And, your first tear off is on the left and your second tear off is on the right. Cause that's how I like them set up. And then like, the checklists, the how's your gas, where are we at maintenance wise? Did you do the filter? All of those things like are the things that you have to take care of yourself when you're racing for yourself. But then when you have some support there, like there are days when I know at the finish line, I'm going to have a beer there handed to me after a big hard race. And it's just like, that's the best. That's the absolute best. Or for instance, like when I go to the Sandblast rally, I had some stuff I had to take care of with my bike. And then I also messed up my sleep schedule a little bit. So I was able to lean on my dad and Katie, my crew chief, for them going to Walmart to pick up the things that we need for race day. And I was able to get my bike work done, which included 2 trips to AutoZone. And then also I have trailer lights for tail lights on the scrambler. That was a whole mess. The drive down, I had my license plate zip tied to the back of the bike. And the wind flipped it over. And when it flipped it over, it cut the taillight wire and then blew the fuse and cut the taillight wire at the taillight. So I couldn't reuse this little taillight I had. So I had to go get 2 like trailer lights and mount them and then wire them up. And so like when you have someone you can depend on like that, and actually Sandblast, the morning of the race, we're talking an hour out, we're at the field. I unload the bike from the back of the truck and it's got a flat tire in the front. And
oh, come on.
I know.
This is the thing, is racing is always exciting. It's like
so
half the battle is just getting to the track or getting to the event
and then
sure your bike works.
having everything I needed there. So my brother Kurt gave me a tube that he had. I didn't bring a tube for some reason. I just didn't grab my tube. So my brother Kurt gave me a tube. My brother Kurt gave me a side stand. Me and my crew chief and my dad picked the scrambler up and put it on the center stand. I pulled the wheel off and then gave it to a friend of mine named Gavin. He's just a lovely person, but like having that kind of support in the pits and that kind of camaraderie too is really rad. So like I got to get dressed, get all my pads on, get all my race gear on. And then it's like someone's handing me a tire with a new tube in it. And I just put it in, put it back together. Cause I got that kind of a little bit better than everybody else will. But having that kind of support and then having my crew chief hand me a Red Bull, because that's also part of the day, is I like a Red Bull right before the race. It's just the focus that you can kind of draw from one of those is amazing. Don't drink Red Bull every day, but if you're going to race and you're a little foggy, a Red Bull goes so far. So, and then every time I came back from being out at the Sandblast rally, there's just food, sandwiches, that kind of like someone to hold the fire extinguisher when you fill the bike. You need that. You actually have to bring your fire extinguisher from.
Oh, really?
Yeah. From under your kitchen sink. You just I just steal mine from under the sink and then.
Okay.
And then bring that. And then someone.
I didn't know if that was PTSD from your previous.
If anybody needs a fire extinguisher with their bike,
that would be you.
It's me. I actually did almost light the bike on fire. This year at the Sandblast rally, I was pouring gas in too fast and it comes out of the vent hose and right onto the exhaust. And I was like, at least this bike's a little chilly. Like I haven't learned my lesson yet. So
no, apparently not.
But that's like the support from a crew chief point of view that is unbelievable. Like you I have someone that I can really rely on, and they're always doing their best. Anybody that's always trying to help you out is always doing their best anyway. Nobody's like gonna half-ass helping you out. But even just having, this is gonna be crazy, but like even just having somebody to turn my socks right side out before I put them on. It's, it's
Whatever it takes to win.
it's really big because you have to fight your hand into one of those long socks and then fight it out. And I can't be doing that kind of stuff while I'm trying to get into race mode. So, that's the kind of support that I have at my races.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. I think that maybe you just that might be the level up for people, if they're just doing okay, but they really want to take it to the next level, get yourself a crew chief.
Yeah, who will turn your socks right side out?
Now, you talked about like you only prep the bike like basically a week or two before the race. Do you still ride street? Like what's your riding schedule like outside of the races?
So I have like some little practice areas that are all for the highway for my dirt bike. So I will take the bike out during race season. I'll try to get out once or twice a week. Take my dirt bike back to these areas where it's like wooded, and I'll just ride for 20, 30 minutes. It makes a huge, huge difference. I don't ride on the street. Last year I didn't ride it on the street at all, except on a couple press launches in Spain and then Baja with Ducati. There's a little bit of street riding there, but that was during the Mexican 1000, the Nor race. So my street riding's gone way down. I actually plan on doing some street riding this year now that the Triumph is back together, because 2 years ago at the Sandblast Rally, stage 1, I had a massive high side. I was in the air long enough where I was like, oh no, like it's not here yet.
That's the worst.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a long time in the air. So it broke one of the rear shocks, because that's a twin shock bike. And then riding it, I finished the race and only I lost first place by 30, 40 seconds.
With one shock.
With half of my rear suspension capability.
Oh.
So
Not too shabby.
I got done the first stage. I looked down, I'm like, oh no. So everybody kind of comes together. Who's got 2 14-millimeter wrenches? Well, everybody's got one, kind of. So I get the rear shock off, and I'm just like, I don't know, throw it down and then crank the other one all the way up. All the preload, all the compression, and spin those shock preload down all the way. And I ran fantastic. That was a really good race 2 years ago. But riding like that, with the one shock twisted the one swing arm down side of the swing arm.
No.
So the swing arm ended up being twisted, which I thought the frame was twisted after I finally looked at it. Like, you can stand behind the bike and you can see that the rear wheel is like this. So I thought the frame was twisted. So that's where I started taking the bike apart to get a feel for the frame. With some of the skills I have as an electrician, I can bend some pipe, and I know what like straight and how to take measurements and stuff. And then I took the rear swing arm off and I put it on my kitchen countertop, and you can see it shaking. Like it won't lay flat. So I was like, oh, this is what's bad. And so
easier fix.
Well, the swing arms are expensive.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Yes.
And you can't bend cast aluminum like that. You can't bend it back. But that's why that bike kind of sat for almost the whole year, was because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. And so now that I've got the bike back together, and Triumph North America really helped me out with getting me some parts for that bike to get it back together, specifically for the Sandblast Rally. It was really cool. They were like super supportive. They've always have been. I've got a pretty good working relationship with Triumph because of, doing press launches and the guys. And I've been to some events like Dirt Days up in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
The Tour Tech Dirt Days. So I've got a good relationship with Triumph. So I kind of begged them for a little bit of help, and they came through in a way. But then they also told me, don't tell anybody we helped you, which I'm not doing right
here
now.
We go. Now everybody knows.
But they've always been there. There have been some really supportive people in the motorcycle industry, which, some people might think is like, that's not relatable. That's not attainable. I've met some professional racers who you would think like won't talk to you. They're regular dudes. They will talk to you. I've spent days with different riders and stuff, and that's always been very cool. And then the other really cool thing was like Triumph has been super supportive. They've been the most supportive of me ever since, I started kind of doing the adventure bike thing, which didn't really start until 2013.
So that was much later in your riding career.
Yeah, it took a little bit of time for me to figure out what an adventure bike was. And then I bought my first Triumph Tiger 800, And I thought I was going to be the two-up sport touring champion of the world. So I was going to go to all these places and find all these good roads and do that kind of thing. And then I went to one adventure bike event with the intention of like, I just don't want to drop the bike, whatever that meant at the time. And made it through. But then like you come home and you are like a kid who just went to band camp or sports camp or Woodward skateboard camp. Like every story starts with like, oh, and this one time at Alt Rider Conserve the Ride, we did this or that. So everyone, it's really magnetic when you talk about stories like that. So then all my friends ended up kind of going to these events with me for a while. And I was doing a ton of dual sport events on adventure bikes.
Wow.
Yeah, that whole being a nature thing and then being off the road is pretty amazing. So I was also doing like the let me ride from my house in Trenton, New Jersey to the middle of Pennsylvania. And one thing I noticed was like the traffic and the demeanor of people that are riding around you really changes once you get out into the middle of nowhere, like say once you get past Harrisburg in Pennsylvania, like everyone's way chiller. But then when you get back towards Philly and New Jersey, it's like, oh man, this is really tense. That's kind of one of the reasons I've stepped away from so much adventure street riding and stuff. But hopefully this year, and also because I have a few sets of wheels now for the Scrambler, I'll be able to go back and forth and do some more street riding.
You had also, you're talking a little bit about getting into shape. Like what does it take also to ride at this level, physically at this, like, I don't want to say at your age.
Don't you want
so I won't, but
I appreciate that. It takes a lot of time and dedication. So for instance, this trophy right here is third place at the Northeast 24-hour race. And I ran that in family duo. So that just means like you and your dad or you and your brother. So it was me and my brother, and we ran just two people for 24 hours. And we both did 16 laps.
On the same bike?
No, we ran our own bikes. You swap a little transponder.
Okay.
And that's an event that's up in upstate New York. And so you're just in a dirt bike race. It's kind of like a 24-hour hare scramble.
Oh, wow.
And, not drinking a lot is important. Staying hydrated. I ride a stationary bike a lot. My cardio was like through the roof. And also just making it to every race you can leading up to that event is also very important. And then there's some time over here where it's like midsummer and nobody wants to race. It's like 100-degree days. So there's a little bit of like slack right before that 24-hour race. So I made sure I got out and just did the practice and showed some dedication there. But then it's all determination that really sets that apart too. For instance, at the end of the 24-hour race, just my forearm meat, like hanging on my arm hurt, like just from being bagged so much for essentially 12 hours of racing. I would say we probably did 10 hours of riding each.
That's a lot.
Yeah. With very minimal like downtime. There was no sleeping downtime. There was a big strategy for that too. And I don't think I would have pushed it nearly as hard if it wasn't my own brother. Like if it was just somebody on a team or a 4-person team, I would have never pushed as hard as I did. And then some other races that were like big endurance races. This past year was D6 had a hell race, which was 2.5 hours. And then the next weekend or 2 weekends later, they did a 5-hour Ironman race. And I ended up getting second overall in the Ironman class. And the amount of effort that took, but then also like the conditioning is very big. Like I was out there against like some really young kids. I don't think they had driver's licenses yet.
It's always humbling.
Yeah. You just see this old guy with a beard go by, and there's some mental games to play there too for those big races. But yeah, the determination and the cardio is very important, but even it doesn't really matter how good your cardio is. It does. But the biggest thing is time on the bike.
You played competitive sports growing up, and you were also in the Marines. Do you feel like any of that mental fortitude?
All of it. All of it. Yeah.
You've been training your whole life, basically.
I mean, even before all that, I was like a kid that had a bicycle, and everybody in the town knew me as like the kid that's always out on his bicycle. I would ride from like my house to 6 miles away, like twice a day, just going to bike tracks and stuff. So like, I've got a real good kind of just like, maybe like internal voice that can kind of just keep going. And it's always been, I love cardio on the bike. If I had an elliptical machine, I would put in some serious time on that. But yeah, I've been training, like you said, my whole life is kind of revolved around these extreme kind of really pushing for it moments. I think when I was 19, before I went to boot camp, I climbed J Peak in Maine in negative 40-degree weather because they shut down the lifts because it was too cold to snowboard. So I just hiked it with me and another
Oh
friend.
God.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's always kind of been those things where you're like, this is kind of crazy and
But exhilarating.
keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. So I ask everybody this is how many motorcycles do you own? Running and non-running.
So I've got two. I have two. So the one right now is just I have I have three motorcycles right now. I technically have a 2-stroke bicycle that I built from Temu, little bicycle conversion.
real?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's the most fun. It's this little bolt-in engine kit, and you bolt it right into a bicycle. It's awesome. It has a little gas tank. And then the I think more fun question is how many bikes have I destroyed?
All right, go with it. Let's go.
I've done the math, and I think I've totaled out, like insurance, full write-off,
Okay.
I think 12 bikes,
12.
maybe 13.
Besides the epic fireball, what's the second most?
Well, my first Triumph Tiger, that I ended up riding that until it was cooked. Like it was just so beat up, and then I sold it for a fundraiser. But that came with
Somebody bought that?
Yeah.
Why would they buy that?
Because it was $1,000.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's pretty cool looking at the time. But yeah, that was a bike I rode, to, I don't know if you want to call it completion. There was, a Triumph 2018 Tiger XCX that I borrowed from Triumph to take to Alt Riders Taste of Dakar. I rode it for 3 days. I never dropped it, never crashed it. And I rode it so hard in those 3 days, keeping up with everybody else. This was a stock bike that I did a review on, but Triumph ended up totaling that bike out when I gave it back to them.
Come on. Why?
Both fork seals were gone. The headlight had been cracked. The header had been dented.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just a lot of, I think one of the radiators was leaking, and this is all just stuff because of the things I'm doing. It's not that bike's fault. It's just me. I can override an adventure bike.
It's me, not you.
Yeah. Like don't expect like anybody to be like, oh, this, like this bike can take anything. Adventure bikes can't take everything you can throw at them. The average person who bought their own bike, which is also me, doesn't want to override their adventure bike like that. But me, I do want to override the bike. So I will bust them up. I mean, the Tiger that I have out west that I'm going to do the Biltwell 100 on, which this year is 2 days of racing. So it's the Biltwell 200 for me. That bike, I've blown the suspension completely out of that bike. Rear shock wise, I think 4 times, and twice was with upgraded rear suspension. So we're just putting these bikes in situations that they're not really built for entirely. And the weight makes the biggest difference. Having a heavy bike puts so much more strain. Like I actually can't override any dirt bike from the major manufacturers right now. Like you can't override one of those, which is kind of the cool thing about like racing and stuff too. You can go buy a stock bike and like put a skid plate and handguards on it, and you can't override it as someone who's not a professional rider. Some of the pro guys could, but like I can't, and most people can't.
So then with the big bikes, is it just the fun of being able to ride it to its death?
It's not the point. But there is that like epic moment when you get through something that you shouldn't have gone through. I've done that in Nevada a couple times with some snow experiences where, we're up in the high desert. It's like April and come up at 8,000 feet and everything's snow. And we're like, well, we have to get over there. I think we can make it. So when you have those moments, I think that's the big thing about the adventure bike riding that makes it worth it, is when you have those moments that we're going to be, oh, I don't know if we should do this. And then you get home and like, you're doing the replay of it and everybody's talking about it. That's the really fun part about adventure bikes, is having a modern day adventure, which I don't know how many people are really doing that. You can go have an adventure again, with an adventure bike, a used adventure bike, or you can get a $300 a month dirt bike, and you can have epic adventures every weekend just by, again, showing up.
Yeah, it changes your life.
It really does. And it gives you just like this confidence too now, like where I'm like, The only thing I can't do with an adventure bike is like ride it out of somewhere if you go downhill. They don't go uphill very well. But like the idea of someone being like, let's go on this adventure ride. I heard it's tough. It's just going to be fun. And then we're going to get in trouble because I'm going to end up overriding a bike or we're going to take a different trail. But that's still the modern day adventure stuff that I don't know where else you kind of get that from.
No, there's not much. I also, been having some conversations with friends recently that also these rural areas to ride are becoming less and less. So like I really feel like in those kind of circumstances, like we need to take advantage of being able to do these rides as much as you can.
Yeah, that's so again, the AMA does all that listing of the adventure bike rides and they, whoever's sponsoring the dual sport and adventure series this year, those rides are in the back of the AMA book and you have to have an AMA membership to ride these things. It's just an insurance thing. So you can set up with your buddies. I know 3 friends that would ride like the worst 250 dual sport bikes crammed onto the back of a Chevy pickup truck, single cab. They would put 3 bikes in the back and a tent. They would share a tent when they would get to these rides and they would be like high-fiving each other at the end. So you can have a low budget adventure bike. And I mean, really like a Yamaha WR 250R is like Yamaha's cheap dual sport bike. One of those, the Honda 300Ls, the Honda 450Ls, those still make great adventure bikes if you're going to one of these dual sport rides. Then the other thing you can do is you can go on that backcountry discovery routes and you can do all of those, which we now have. I think we have from Canada down to like Pensacola, Florida or something. And then all the West Coast ones. So I've ridden the Colorado BDR, the Utah BDR, Nevada, some of the New Mexico one. There's a Southern California one. I don't know if they're done doing, but all those resources are online to either organize your own ride. But when you can go to someone else's ride that's organized and then they're going to have like food at the end of it and it's $200, you can have that amazing adventure, have it, all the routes planned. There'll be some arrows so you don't get lost and you know where to go. Because that is the hard thing about, like you're saying, the rural areas or losing some places to ride. When you do one of these events, say Tour Tech Dirt Days, they have these routes already planned, and having someone do that legwork for you is really it takes a lot of the worry of like, am I on someone else's property? I've had someone draw a gun down on me looking for places to ride before. And it was one of those gun loving states. I think it might've been Virginia or North Carolina, but like, he was in his right to kind of pull his gun out on me and be like, what are you doing here? But when you do some of these events that are organized, you don't have that thing in the back of your head. You can have a lot more fun.
Now you're getting ready for the Biltwell and you said that you have a bike out west. And since you for this last race, really, prep the bike at the very end, how are you going to get ready for the Biltwell?
So my friend, who I don't know if you know him, Nathan Verdugo, I met him doing a Ducati press launch a decade ago, a little bit more. And when I bought the Tiger 900 Rally Pro that I have, I bought it out west. And the plan was to keep it out west and maybe ride it back home and keep that bike nice. And then
relatively.
That bike actually got destroyed at a Roland Sands event during COVID when he had this Motor Ranch Classic thing. We all rode over there. It was just supposed to be like a chill time, and the bike got knocked over onto a curb and it broke the entire headlight assembly, and all of that front was just gone. So I was like, well, we've taken all the money out of this. And so then I spray painted it gold and turned it into a race bike. And then the Biltwell 100 was coming up. And so that's where I kind of focused that bike for that. And so it stays at Nathan's garage. And then also Nathan's dad is like a full blown, he loves desert racing. He's all the way into it. He's won some Baja stuff. He supported some women's team. I think he just supported a women's team at the Mint 400. So he's just all in on it. And actually, so I kind of send him some money once in a while when he's like, you need new rear brake pads.
But he's been riding your bike.
No, he's been building it. That's it.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's,
all right.
He won't even show me the seat on it because Triumph doesn't sell a single seat for that bike. But I was having issues with the seats where we ended up having to tape them to the bike because they would fall off. Again, it's me. It's not Triumph. And so that bike gets kind of like a full race prep Baja guy wrenching on it, which is super important. Otherwise, I would fly out to the event or to LA maybe like 2 days in advance and try to I'll have an idea of all the wrenching that I got to do. But like After the built well this year, the rear shock was blown and the left side or clutch side radiator was leaking. So that had a big hole in it and I lost the exhaust on it. So it was just running like a straight pipe. So, I can get those things set over to Tony and he does my race prep for me. And then again, with dirt bikes, people can be a little bit too competitive with the adventure bike stuff. Everybody's kind of really excited to help each other out. And so anytime I need any help out there, there's plenty of resources around. You just have to be friendly and cool with everybody. And that's how I kind of take care of that bike out west.
That's awesome. I think maybe your next career move within the motorcycle industry might be test riding motorcycles for
there are
seeing if you can break anybody's technology, and then they can make some studies and figure out the best
they have
evolution.
They have the answers for those things, and they don't need me to ride anything to death. There's plenty of reliable test riders out there, but it's just a use case scenario. I'm using these adventure bikes for racing and things like that, and they're just not cut out for it. For instance, like when I go to the built well on the second day of racing, I'm racing the modern expert, I think 40 plus class. So I'm racing only dirt bikes, and it says like only dirt bikes, but I don't know. I think I was like 35th overall last year out of like probably 140 dirt bikes and probably 20 or 30 really fast guys. I might have been even higher than that for my overall finish, but I just told them on my entry sheet, I'm going to be on my Tiger 900. It'll be fine. And I've raced my Tiger against other dirt bikes in Pioche, Nevada, which has, they've had some adventure bike races, but they've got a really good kind of system going on over there with Kellen Walsh, who's another Dakar finisher. And I've ridden with him a few times, but they host a race in Northern Nevada and I've done it on my adventure bike. And I've been competitive. I've beaten a lot of people. I actually pulled the whole shot, but that's just because it's a GP start. So it's in town on the street. So I could do 100 miles an hour. I was the first person into the turn, and then it's a big uphill. And I was being so bad about it. I was just first gear, roosting everybody. The dust is hanging. I was like dragging my feet through the sill. No one passed me until I got a flat tire. So I led, a dirt bike race on my adventure bike, and then I still finished good against all the dirt bikes. And it's more just, I want to put in the seat time and have a good time. So it's not like I'm really going to try to be competitive on the second day. It's the first day when at the build where it's everybody from mini bikes, like a Coleman mini bike, they could buy at Harbor Freight all the way up to the silly adventure bikes and some vintage stuff in between. And then the not so serious people too. That event sells out. So there's no lack of interest there. It's cool to see everybody not take that race serious, because after the race on Saturday, it's a big party. But I have to behave, because then I have to race on Sunday as well.
Keep it in check.
Yeah.
I have to say that you're a great ambassador for this sport, because you really do bring a lot of enthusiasm and really share it with people around you and get people into the sport. So it's appreciated from the industry.
Thank you. Sometimes I come off maybe a little cocky or arrogant, and I really don't mean that, but it just kind of comes with this face and this beard. But I really do enjoy seeing everybody make it out to these events, talking to people, having a good time. It's so different than what you see on the internet or what you see in your normal everyday life. Where people kind of aren't friendly. They're not talking to each other. It gives a real sense of community, which if I didn't have the motorcycling community, I'd probably be back at the ice hockey rink looking for friends and community and things to do. And that's the big thing that really keeps me going, is the community around it. And just unplugging from everything is really nice. But you don't worry about work. You don't worry about the internet. You don't worry about politics when you're out there racing. And it's just this really big physical release too. You put out all this energy, and then you finish, and then you have a sense of accomplishment. It's huge. It's better than anything that you can really do with your Sunday. You don't have to do it every Sunday like I do, but I prefer it that way.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming by, Steve.
Thanks for having me, and congratulations on reaching 1,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like and subscribe, everybody.
Yes, definitely.
See ya.
And to everybody else, ride smart. Ciao.
Bye.